Chapter 6. Who goes to all the masses of a Sunday, and takes the plate around, dressed in the neat black coat, with the blue shirt and the high white collar, and comes back down the aisle from communion with hands clasped piously and eyes cast down? Who is the little man, meek and mild, that nods benignly and with dignity, and has the hair pasted flat like brown satin on the skull, and with never a bristle to be seen on the little face, smooth and pink as a shell? Who has the obsequious half-smile on his lips, fastened there when he gets up, and taken off and cleaned and pressed when he goes to bed, and the hideously obvious false teeth that are shown to the public in the day, and that snarl alone in a glass of water at night? Who is the sanctimonious prater of Christian charity, enveloped in an aura of goodness, this pillar of the church, this lovable, harmless character of the daylight, and one of God's chosen? Hey, Mr. Dooley, the cat's sitting on the biscuit tins again. Oh, thank you, Jackie. Come on, pussy, not nice. Go outside now, that's a good pussy. Oh, thank you ever so much, Mr. Dooley, and I promise to clean the whole debt up next week. That's quite all right, Miss Moran. I understand what it is to have sickness in the house. When you're able, Miss Moran, no hurry. Dooley's store was on a corner, and his narrow front door was hung on each side with cooking utensils, mops, and brooms. His floor, scrubbed nightly by his wife, was on a level with the footpath, sluiced and swept by his wife every morning. Dooley closed the door and said, "Thank God, that's over for the day." A grubby little girl with a billy on her arm knocked on the door with a shilling, and Dooley said, "Bloody half-wits, shut the door and they bang on it. Don't they think a man's ever done?" He opened the door and said, "Yes, dear, what is it?" And the child edged through, pushed the billy into his hands, and ran over and climbed on the chair, and gaped at the lollies in a small glass case. "There you are, sweetheart," said Dooley, giving her the milk, the change, and a couple of butterballs, escorting her kindly to the door and saying, "Now go straight home, darling, and mind you don't get run over," and closing the door after her. He pulled off his apron, went around to the till, and started to count the takings. His wife came downstairs, his downtrodden, beaten-down wife, and she said, "Aloysius, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, said Dooley. She hung about looking at him, waiting for a gap in the vocal calculations. When it came, she said timidly, "Aloysius." "What do you want?" he snapped fiercely. "Can't you see I'm busy? I just wanted to have a word with you. It's about—" "Well, wait till I'm finished." Dooley glared at her, his teeth clenched in exasperation. He savagely took up his counting, and she turned wearily and went back upstairs. She got halfway when she came down again, "Don't know what I'm doing these days," and went out back to the kitchen. She set the table, and Cassie came downstairs to help her. Slow, quite dull-eyed, Dooley came through, and they heard him washing himself. He appeared in the kitchen, wiping his hairless, womanish arms, and the glare was still in his eyes. "That moron woman couldn't pay the bill today, only half of it. Said her husband was sick. You were down that way yesterday, weren't you? Did you hear anything?" His wife shook her head. "He could be dead for all I know. I don't know why I keep on with this tick business. Think you're made of money, these people. Give out the groceries, never think you want your money like everyone else. It's good of you to stick to such people," his wife said mechanically. He went back to hang the towel over the straight string line, and came into the kitchen, rolling down his sleeves and buttoning them. "Isn't tea ready yet?" "Yes, sit down." Cassie brought the plate of stew across and put it in front of him. He saw her trembling hand and looked up swiftly into her face, slightly startling her. "What's the matter with you that you're so nervous?" "Nothing, Dada. I just didn't sleep too good last night, that's all." He reached out for a slice of bread and broke it up in the stew, mixing it in with his spoon. The woman sat down and the girl, and slowly they ate. No grace before meals, since there was no visitor. No happy conversation, just silence and the clack and champ of Dooley's dental plates. Halfway through his wife's meal he was finished, and she got up to pour the tea. He smoked a cigarette with that, since there was no visitor, and sat back feeling better. "How's the socials, Cassie?" "Better attended." Cassie looked slightly frightened at him. She nodded. "Oh yes, they're getting a big roll-up now." Dooley smiled. That's a kick in the teeth to Bob Whelan. He didn't think they'd be a success, was all against it at the meeting. "They turn up from everywhere now," Cassie told him. "Well, I count it as my own personal achievement, my idea and my tenor that kicked it off. Takes a man with a business mind to think of these things. It'd make a bigger success of it if I had the time to get in there on that committee. I'd show them just how to organize. Easy pie for them now, everything's going smoothly." The woman didn't say anything. The same old tune had been harped before. Cassie excused herself, rose, and went out to wash her face. When she returned, Dooley told her not to forget to spread it around just how responsible he was for the idea of getting the dances going, and see that he got his credit. She assured him she would, and went upstairs to dress. She sat on the bed, combing her hair for a long time, staring at the floor. When she came fearfully downstairs, Dooley was in the lounge, smoking and reading the paper. Under the low-powered light, his wife washed the dishes. Cassie walked out and kissed her mother and said she'd be home early. And she went in smiling and kissed her father on the forehead, and he went to the door with her, then stood there with her for a few minutes before Lucy Chambers came. And he said, "You do look pretty, Lucy. Have a good time, and don't be home too late, Cassie dear." And at the dance, Cassie looked around for Dano Costello, but he wasn't there, and she felt sick and thinking he wasn't coming. She sat down in a corner at the end of the hall and watched the dancers, and then she saw him, and she weaved her way across the floor and cried, "Dano, gee." "Ah, hello," Dano said, without interest, a little piqued. She didn't notice it in her joy at seeing him. She put her arms around his neck and forced him to dance with her. "Gee, I missed you last week, Dano. Where were you?" "Ah, I didn't get here till late. About nearly 10, I think it was. I didn't see you. You know, I've got to be home by 10. I was gone." "Well, this was great. Where were you, Dano? I didn't see you." "Dano, you know, I've got to be home by 10. Dano, better shuffle this mug off quick, or you'll never get rid of her. Shouldn't have come tonight, or come late again. Put the time in with the fellers down at the fun parlor, and turned up late again and missed her." "Dano, let's go for a walk," Cassie said. He suddenly felt excited at the suggestion and steered her off the floor. They went outside and stealthily slipped away. "Boy, she's asking you now. You must be good. No more, though. This is the last time. No more. Damn her. Dano, you do love me, don't you?" "You know I do." He tossed off. "You know, when Jimmy Soper died, after he died, you didn't come to the dance for 3 weeks. Was it to avoid me?" He laughed. "Hell, you're a silly little goat. Of course it wasn't. I couldn't make it, that's all. And you came the next week, and you hardly wanted to dance with me. And last week you turned up late." Dano played affronted. "What's got into you? What's all this talk in aid of? That night I hardly wanted to dance with anyone. I didn't want to come to the dance at all, but I did. Jimmy was my pal. I'm not made of concrete, you know," he flamed. "If you were worried because I didn't ask you to come down the park that night. Oh, darling, no. Please don't be angry, Dano. I didn't think anything. I don't know what you're getting at, he smoldered pretensively. Then, eager to stop the pretense, he chucked her arm and said affably, Anyway, we're here now, and I'll show whether I love you or not. He was excited and eager. I brought you down here, Dano, to tell you something. I know, you love me. Yes, I do. I do so much. Strike this mush, this gooey drip. Will I be glad when it's over? This is the last time. If I don't pitch this Sheila by next week, I'll turn priest. And God knows I won't turn priest. Cassie put her head down and said, straightly and simply, Dano, I'm going to have a baby. What? I'm pregnant. He was stunned. You're having me on, he pleaded. No, it's true. Oh, Jesus, he breathed. This is terrible. She saw the white encircled stare of his eyes. Who told you? How do you know? I know, she said. I know, Dano. I'm scared. God, what are we going to do? Dano, Cassie grabbed his arm. You said you love me. You'll stick by me. I'm frightened. Say you will. Holy Mac, everything happens to me. Say you will. Stick by me. Hell, how was this? Got to think fast. Bloody hide. Leading you on. Glad to play. Now the big moan. You've got to help me, Dano. Dano, you will, won't you? Say it's all right. Now, wait a minute, he said, fear throwing a harsh anger into his voice. Why pull me in on this? How do you know I did it? What about all the other fellers you've had? What are you talking about? You know there's been no one else. She was shocked and hurt. You know it's been only you. What a slut, ready for anyone, and it had to be you. Any feller would have done her, but it had to be you. Don't give me that, he snarled. He felt the breeze blow, the sweat icy on his brow. She started to cry, realizing her helplessness, his shocked aloofness when she expected his arms round her, soothing words in her ear, loving kisses on her lips. You don't care, do you? I suppose any girl would have done you. You never meant anything you said. I didn't think you'd be like this. I didn't. She sprang up crying and started to walk across the park. He watched her, and alarm jerked him into action. And he ran after her and grabbed her shoulder, and she melted readily up against him and clutched him, and he automatically put his arms around her. Mug, watch her. She'll put you in. Use your head. Got to keep this quiet. That's the main thing. Get her mad, and she'll spill everything. He put his hand under her chin, stared down into her face, and saw the love there edging away, the disappointment and resentment, and he knew what hand to play. Come on over here on the seat and stop crying. Geez, I didn't mean anything, Cassie. You just give me a shock. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. They sat down on the form, close together, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. Gee, we've got to try and work this out, Cassie. Does anybody know? Nobody, Cassie said. I'm the first, of course. Are you going to tell anybody? You won't, will you? No, why should I? Hell, you must have got a fright. Your game, and when I said I loved you, I meant it. Cassie, cross me heart. He kissed her lips. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you, Cassie. You're too sweet. She snuggled against him, comforted, one hand gently stroking his face. Listen, he said. Maybe you could go to some doctor and get rid of it. I can ask one of the fellers, Abby Thomas. I heard him saying he got his girlfriend into trouble, and he got her fixed up. She pulled out of his arms and faced him. No, Dano. No, I won't do that. She was horrified. But it's the right way. No, I won't do it. Don't ask me to. Don't ask me. Okay, you silly little sow. Make it hard. I ought to choke you and dump you here. But he realized his mistake and pulled her to him again and patted her shoulder and said, Well, I suppose there's only one thing to do. What's that? Get married. Oh, Dano. She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him, and told him she loved him, and he knew that was what she had been waiting for, but it only horrified and alarmed him all the more. Yet strangely amid his confused thought, he felt a certain case before he knew her faith in him had been completely restored, and while ever she thought he would not let her down, she would be easy to handle. Spat for time, that's the idea. Keep cool, use your head, and spat for time. Cassie, listen, there's no need to say anything to anyone yet. This is a secret, and we'll keep it to ourselves. You don't have to tell your mother and father, and I don't have to tell mine. When we're ready, we'll just clear out. No, Dano, I won't breathe a word. That's a good girl, and don't you worry, we'll be all right. They went back to the hall, and Dano stayed in the yard while she went inside. Then he turned and walked down the street, thinking, I'll get out of this somehow. I'm not marrying that piece for anything. She got herself into this, and she can get herself out. I'll think up something and keep in her good books while I'm doing it, the slut, or she'll top me off.